Hi again, everybody. So aren't you lucky I'm actually doing two reviews today? My second review for the day is going to be The Pale White by Chad Lutzke. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was published by Crystal Lake Publishing, which the tagline is Tales from the Darkest Depths. I've been following Crystal Lake for a while. I quite enjoy a lot of the stuff that they put out. And I don't think I gave a spoiler warning on the last one, but yes, I'm going to give you all the spoilers. So if you haven't read it, go on and pick it up. It's a pretty quick read. It's under 100 pages. I've been following Chad Lutzke on social media. We're connected through Facebook and I think on Twitter too. He lives in Battle Creek, Michigan, and he writes a lot of coming of age type stories. And a few years ago, I read his book of of foster homes and flies. It's a little bit of a mouthful. And so when anybody sort of asks for a recommendation of, horror, coming of age, anything like that, I always recommend that one because I really enjoyed it. And he tries to write across genres. He claims to be heavily influenced by Joe R. Lansdale. So that's a little bit about Chad for you. Now, The Pale White it's a little hard going at first because it's about, because of the subject matter. It's about some young girls who were trafficked, kidnapped, and kept in an attic. Oop, to be sold as rape slaves for this rather disgusting human being that they only call Doc. So the first one, the oldest, is a young woman named Alex. She's sort of a goth emo type, and she thinks she's a vampire. And we find out through the course of the story that she's been kind of fed with this idea that she's a vampire and she's sick and she's all this. She can't go out in the sunlight. And the second girl, so Alex has been there the longest. It's not stated how old she is, but I think she's in her early 20s. And then there's Cammie, who's 9 years old. She's the saddest because she doesn't speak. She's been traumatized, and Doc keeps her hair cut short so that she can look like a boy and appeal to the pederasts, which is just I got some sick friends. just the idea that that exists, and it's so sad, but it does. Unfortunately, it's it's a sad reality that children are trafficked. And then the girl that's been there the least amount of time, she's been there about a year. Her name's Stacia, and she's 17, and unfortunately she was basically drugged at a party and woke up in this place. And so they exist in this attic where they're locked away, except when they come out to fulfill these gross pervy men's fantasies. So we come in media res, I guess they call it, which is like right in the middle of the story. And the girls haven't eaten for a few days. Alex bit somebody, and so Doc has been punishing them by starving them. And Alex she's just tired of it. She's like, no, we got to do something. We got to do something. So they create a distraction. They bang on the door, and they fake Cammie being sick. And when Doc comes to investigate, Alex attacks him, rips out his throat, drinks his blood, promptly pukes on herself, which is quite understandable. This is just all just in the first chapter. Yes, it is a spoiler, but it sets up an interesting dilemma because these girls have lived this way for so long. It's not like they can go back and rejoin normal society. And it's not like they have anything to go back to. I mean, Cammie's only 9 years old. This is the only life she knows. Alex lived on the street before this, and Stacia lived with her alcoholic mother and her mother's boyfriend who was abusive. So what are they going to go back to? And I also wanted to compare it a little bit to Flowers in the Attic because Cammie tries to draw flowers everywhere, and even the idea of starvation as punishment. Like there's a few little things there that are a bit comparable. And also to Room by Emma Donoghue, Is it Donahoe or Donahue? I can never remember. Which is, again, this is the story of somebody who was kidnapped, kept in captivity, and this, and it's from the point of view of a young child. This is all the only life he's ever known. So the girls decide to take a little bit of a rest, and they go through the house and they eat a bunch of junk food and they watch cartoons, and it's a little bit bittersweet because, I mean, this isn't stuff that should be a 9-year-old girl's first discovery after her, her companion murdered her captor, right? It's kind of a jarring thing, but it's also kind of fun to watch these girls just get something normal, something kid-like back into their lost innocence. And so while they're staying in the house for the night, we get some flashbacks about what life was like for them, and just how carefully controlled Doc kept their whole existence. The clothes that they wore, the personas that they had to put on for these gross men. And Alex starts to exhibit some strange behaviors that, she's going to need to go out and get blood. She's going to need to hunt. And Stacia is trying to convince her that, no, you're not a vampire. You just have had your mind twisted around by this sick fuck. Let's go and get some help. But at the same time, I mean, there's a dead body in the hallway, right? Somebody's got to deal with it. So while they're trying to figure out what to do, Stacia goes to the store, comes back, and then there's a big knock at the door, and it's one of Doc's clients. So they take the guy hostage, and they're still trying to figure out what to do with him. And then, then he says, oh, well, I came to visit a friend, and there's just these 3 crazy bitches I've never seen before. So Alex attacks him. And it comes out, and again, this is a spoiler, it comes out that Cammy is actually Stacy's daughter. Or, sorry, not Stacy. Cammy is actually Alex's daughter. Alex got pregnant with her during one of these festivities, gave birth, and has been raising her in this completely abnormal existence. And there's not a lot told about when Cammy was a baby. I don't know if, like, Doc got a wet nurse or something. There's a lot of questions that are not answered. So the long and the short of it is the client, whose name's Steve, escapes. Alex is killed, so we don't have to worry about her ever hunting anybody, but it is still a very sad scene. And Stacia decides she's got to go. She's got to go home. She's got to try to take Cammy and pick up the pieces. So she does manage to get together as much cash as she can, and she and Cammy get away in Doc's truck. And they come across actually an accident scene where Steve drove into a pole, and she's like totally paranoid. And then they run into somebody else that knew Doc and recognizes the truck. And there's a few stressors along the way, but they do manage to get away. They do manage to get on a train. And there's even a happy ending, which is always nice. I knocked a star off because, well, okay, I don't think it's to the detriment of the story at all. But we were talking, my sister and I were talking about how the stories that have the most appeal, things like sitcoms, you have joke, joke, joke. And then at the end of it, there's this connection where you have the heart of it, the beating heart, the heartwarming, where they come together, they love each other, and so on. And that's what this story does. I mean, there is a genuinely happy ending, or at least a happy for now ending, because you know that the social workers are coming, the foster system is coming, all of the people that are going to ask questions, they're coming, and it's going to be quite invasive for a while. But it's still, what I found was that there's a certain appeal to a fantasy of being able to rescue these trafficked children. And I appreciate that. As an author, you see something wrong in the world. And one of the things that we can do is to make it better by writing it better. But at the same time, it's sad because that's rarely what actually happens in the real world. And I've said it before. I mean, part of the reason I read horror is that the monster's sometimes bested, and sometimes there's even a happy ending. And for this one, there was, but the happy ending seemed to come a little bit too quickly, and I think that's why I knocked off a star. There are stressors along the way, but they're not quite enough to really, really up the stakes for Stacia or for Cammy. But that's not the end of the world in a story. A story is a story. And overall, it's really enjoyable. The characters are great. They're well drawn. And because it's such a short story, it says quite a lot in such a very short amount of time. So I really appreciated that about the way that the story's structured and the way that we get to see just glimpses of these characters' lives. But each one has a little bit of a redemption and has a little bit of this exposure as real people. So 4 out of 5 stars. The Pale White by Chad Lutzke. Go check it out. And I hope you're reading lots of great horror. Have a great day.